Good evening all. Welcome to day 10 live session in Master Course Java 30 days course. So today we are going to learn about how to use static and final keywords. How to use static and final keywords in Java programming and how we can implement the programming part in Java. So by using these two keywords and what is the purpose and everything we are going to learn today with a proper examples. So we'll start with a static keyword. So the static keyword in Java is mainly used for managing the memory. Like we all know, whenever we can create a class, it consisting of some data members or the variables and the member functions which you are going to create for your class. So the memory is created for each and every instance of your class. Like how many objects you are going to create. For every object, it is reserved a memory in your Java programming. So whereas in some situations, see for example, if you go with a real-time example, suppose we'll go with ticket booking in railways. Suppose we are taken one train details and we are going to book from source to destination. Like you can choose your current location and from that you are going to reserve the seats for your journey. So now you can observe that in that particular train, the availability of seats, it can be visible to everyone as a fixed. Means at the same time, whoever or wherever they can see the details of the availability of tickets for that particular train, it will show you the same value. So irrespective of your space or your location or your age, something like that. So in real time, whenever we need to share the things common to everyone. So because you can take an example here itself for a railway ticket reservation. So we can keep all the passengers. So we can treat each and every person is a object. So they are going to reserve a ticket for a particular train. So now the train is having all the properties and the behaviors. Right. So now each and every person is having their own things like name, age, gender, and then how many tickets they want. Everything is same, but they can view the availability of tickets which is common to all the objects. So in such cases, we are going to use the concept of static. The static keyword in Java is used to share the same variable or a method of a given class. So now the common place, it is going to be shared by each and every person. So individual things are not going to be created for the static things. So that is the main purpose. We have to manage the memory. Right? We have to use the memory in an efficient way by using this static keyword. And the static can be used in Java in different ways, like in 4 ways. Like you can use static with variable, so which is also known as a class variable. And we can use static with method, which also known as a class method, and static block and static class. So we can use the static keyword along with 4 concepts. One is for variable and another is for method and another is for block and the last one is static class. So we'll discuss about each and everything in brief. Then we'll go with the programmatic part. Try to understand the implementation part also about the static and final keywords in Java programming today. So we'll start with a variable. So variable or data member is nothing but which will describe the properties or the characteristics of your class. Suppose you can take a class employee. So now the employee name, employee gender, ID, phone number, address, everything is nothing but the properties or the characteristics. Simply we can say variables, data members. Whereas the behavior, so it's having a behavior like you are getting the details of your employee, or else you can make some manipulation on the data which is available in your class itself. So those are the behaviors of a class. So now in Java, when we declare a variable or a data member with a static keyword, and such variables are called as static variables. And these variables will get exactly one copy of memory is created and shared among all the instances of your class. So from the memory perspective, like static variables are stored in heap memory. When your class is loaded, so at that time the memory is reserved for your static variable. So this memory is not created along with your instances or else your objects. So these variables, that is of your static variables, will get a memory when a class is loaded. So because of that reason, these variables are known as class variables. So we can create the static variables at the class level only, and static blocks, static variables are executed in same order they are present in a program. So in which order you are given this static variables and static blocks, static methods in our program, and depends on that order only it is going to be executed in our program. So what simply I'm going to explain you is, whenever in your program you want to make something as common to everyone, then you can make those fields or those variables as static. For example, you take your organization, you take your department. So suppose for example you are studying BTech, so under CSC department. So every student belongs to the CSC department is having the department name is computer science only. So irrespective of their roll number, their name, like which class they are going to study, either third year, second year, first year or final year, they all belongings to and they all share the common branch, that is CSC. So why I said like by using the static variable we can manage your memory very efficiently, because see, for example you want to create one database and now you want to save your content in a tabular form. So now you can take different fields like serial number, roll number, name, and then gender, phone number, because everything is differentiate from one person to another person. Like you can make one another column which consisting branch, and you can keep the branch name is same for all the students. So now for that column, how many students we have, and we need to create a memory for that common data also multiple times. So because of that the memory is wasted. So now what we are doing is here, what are the commonly shared by all the objects, we don't want to create a multiple copies of that. We can create only one copy, and that copy is created at memory space heap, and then that is going to be shared by all the objects. So we know very well, like we can create any number of objects for your class. So for every object is having their own properties like name, age, gender and everything. But all these objects are commonly share one common property, that is a department name, right? So I'll show you one So now see, so this is an example for static variable. So I already executed all these programs. So just we go through once. So here in my HTML folder, so I have so we go with an employee. So this employee demo. See, this is an example for static variable. Now you can see here this is a keyword class, and here my class name is employee, and then this employee is having three data members like employee ID, employee name and date of join. And these three variables are differ for each and every employee because every employee is having their own employee ID, employee name and date of joins. We cannot make these three things, any one of thing is a common for an employees. But coming to an organization, so now this is my variable which I declare inside of my class and I make it as a static. Because I think of that I'm collecting the information of an employee regarding to Infosys. So now here the organization is common for all the employees who works under the organization Infosys. So because of that reason, I don't want to make multiple copies of the same variable. I can keep a single copy and I'm trying to share this single information with all my employees. So now we know this is a constructor because you all know like this is a method which is having the class name. So simply it is a constructor and this is a parameterized constructor. And we know the purpose of constructor, like we are going to initialize the values of your variables. So by that here I am initializing my employee ID, name and date of join. And by using this display method, I am going to display my employee ID, employee name, date of join along with the organization. So along with organization, so I'm trying to display. And after that, this is my main class. Now you can see employee demo. So you can observe that my file name is saved with employee demo. Why? Because my main method is having in this class. So after creating your class and what are the things you required and you can pack up in your class, then it's a time to create an object. So it depends on the number of instances you are created, the number of objects we are created and that many of records we can maintain. So here I am keeping two employees information so that I am creating two objects for my class employee. So this is my class employee. I am creating two objects E1 and E2. So this is a way how I am going to create my objects. And then because I am using constructors here for assigning the values instead of method. So by this constructor, it can assign values at the time of an object is created. So because of that reason, I can pass the values of my first employee at the time when I am creating my first object. So similarly, I can do for my second object also. Now I am trying to display the details of my employee. So simply here the details of an employee ID, name, date of join and organization is called by my objects E1 and E2. So E1 dot display is going to display the details of Gauri and E2 dot display is going to display the details of Hamant. So I'll execute this program. So I just use my command prompt and then I just change my class path. So because we all know like my programs are saved by default in HTML file which is available on my desktop. So here I need to give my Java compiler to compile my program. So my class name is employee demo here. So I can give like this employee demo dot Java. So you make sure that the program name is correct, employee demo.java. So I just click on enter. So it will show you any errors is there. Then we have to rectify and recompile it. But here there is no error. So again my prompt is here. So I just give my interpreter and I'll provide my class name as employee demo to execute this program. So now you can see these are the details of my first employee and second employee. See here simply I am going to assign, going to display the values. So because of that reason we can see. And at the memory aspect, the static variable organization is created only once and that can commonly shared by all the objects which we are created. Okay, so I will demonstrate you that so that you all can understand. So see for example, here I have my class and this is my class. So in this class I have and my class name is employee. So this employee class will consisting members of type string, employee name, so e-name, and integer of type employee ID, and then date of join is of type string. So these are three ordinary variables I have. That is a non-static variables I have. Date of join. And I have one more variable of type static. So static is a keyword. So make sure that you have to written in small letters because Java is also a case sensitive language. So static and my variable name is organization and it is of type string. So this is a data type. So my my variable is organization. So this is a static variable. Right? So this is a static variables and these are all my non-static variables. So you can see these are all my non-static variables. So whenever I'm created objects, suppose if I'm created two objects, so in this program which I'm given an example, right? So my object names are, my first object name is E1 and my second object name is E2. So we seen that my first object is E1 and my second object is E2. And every object is having the copies of, like it's having the copies of name, so every object is having the space for employee name, employee ID, and then date of join. Because the memory for these are created at the time when an object is created. So the memory is allocated for all these three data members at the time when an object is created. And we are passing the values for these also, so that whatever the values we are passing at the time of creating objects E1 and E2, at that time the values are going to be assigned for this employee name, ID and job. So each and every object is having their own things. And then for this static variable, the organization, so which can be created only once. It cannot create multiple times. It can created only once at the area of heap. So it is created at heap area. So heap is one type of memory. So there the memory is allocated for your static variable, that is organization. And this can be created when a class is loaded into your Java virtual machine. So now we already assigned value for this organization, that is Infosys. So we already assigned this value, and this value is going to shared by all the objects which you are created. So this is your common area, and this organization, the static variable, which is going to be shared by the objects which you have created for your class employee. So you can create any number of objects. Suppose if you want to extend one more object, then what's happening? So it will create one more objects like E3. So now your object name is E3. So now this E3 is also having the memory for the non-static variables, that is employee name, employee ID and date of join. And this is also going to share the common area, right? This Infosys, because all these employees are related to same organization, right? So this is the purpose of static. So static is mainly used for managing the memory. So whenever the common things is required for all the objects of your class, we need not to create that common area multiple times, and we can create only once, and that can be available for all the objects. So that is the purpose of static here. So static variables and non-static variables both are different. Why? Because the non-static variables can get a memory when an object is created, whereas the static variables can get a memory when the class is loaded. So that is the main difference between the non-static variables and static variables. And the variables which is declared with the keyword static, and such variables are said to be static variables. And we remember, and static variables are never changed with the normal methods. We want to make any modifications on that, we can use static methods. Okay, and static methods can do the operations on the static variables. So we cannot object is not required to instantiate your static variables or blocks or something, because this is not at all related to your object, that completely belongs to your class, right? So whenever the class is loaded and everything, we get accessing of your static variables, blocks and everything. So this is now move on to the next thing, that is a static block. So how the static keyword is used along with your methods. So simply a method is having the keyword static before the method name. Such type of methods are said to be static methods. And these methods is also belongs to class. It's not related to object, because I said already, when you say something as static and the memory is allocated only once and add by multiple things. And a static method can invoke without need of creating any instance of a class, because it is related to class. We don't need any object to instance. And static method can access the static data members and can change the values of it. So static methods can access only the static variables. It cannot access non-static variables. We cannot do anything to a non-static variables. By using static variable, if you want to make any changes, we can't do with a normal method. So for changing that, definitely we require a static method. So static methods can directly access the static data. No need of any objects here. And then they cannot refer, means we cannot use any this keyword or super keyword along with your static keywords, right? So in methods, we can see in constructors, we can see the keywords like this and super. Whereas when you are using the static methods, we cannot use this or super keywords along in your static methods. So I'll show you an example of static method. So I think it is, yes. So now you can see this is a static method. So I'll take the same example so that you can understand. So here I'll take the same example what I explained for a static variable, and I will add the static method to it and make changes of my organization Infosys to Wipro. So I want to change my organization. So that is my organization name, now it is Wipro. So I want to change it. So I cannot change the value of the static variable directly because it is related to class. It doesn't related to my object. So I cannot make any changes on that. So if I want to make any modifications on this variable, definitely I need a method, and that method is again of type static. So now you can see employee 1 is having the data members and one static variable like organization, and it is initially initialized with Infosys. And this is a constructor which is going to initialize values for my data members. And here is my static method, and my method name is change. And this is of type static, so it can directly access the static variable. So what is my static variable here? Organization. So I can take this organization and I'm going to change my organization name Wipro, right? So instead of Infosys. And this is simply the display method which is going to display the details of the employee. And here it is, everything is same. So now you can identify here, I just call this change method, because if you are not calling, this method is not going to be initiated. So what simply we have to do? So we can call this method, but you can observe that here I'm not calling with my object. I'm calling with my class. Right? Now you can see I'm calling with my class name, because I already said static method is belongs to class, not it belongs to object. So because of that reason, I can initiate my static method with my class name instead of my object name. So you have to find out this difference. For an ordinary method display, I'm going to instantiate with my object of class. Whereas the static method, it is going to be instantiated by class. So this is the difference between the normal method and static method. So I'll try to execute this. So my class name is demo1. So which is an example for static method. So now I need to execute this. So now you can see now my organization is now Wipro. It is not Infosys. So you can observe the difference. In previous example, when I executed and my organization name is given as an Infosys for each and every employee. Right? But here the organization name is changed by using the static method, and then the modification is going to be applied for each and every object. So this is a static method. So now the next one is a static block. So we can use the static keyword along with the block. So the static block is used to initialize the static variables. So in previous example, when I am using the static variable, you can see that the value I am going to assign to static variable directly. So in sometimes we want to make some manipulations and we want to apply some operations, and then we are going to assign that values to your static data members or the static variables, and we can make multiple what we can say like initialize the static variables. We can have a situations like we want to do it in a multiple line processing. So then we are going to use the concept of static block. So now we know that block is nothing but a combination of flower braces. So simply we can say that is a block. So before that we can put your static keyword, then it will treat it as a static block actually. So the purpose of static block is going to assign values to your static variables. That is only the purpose. And then, so we know that when you are using Java programming, so always your Java compiler starts execution from the main function. Whenever we return a static blocks in your programming, so the static blocks is having the highest priority than your main method. Like it is going to be executed before your main method. Because when the class is loaded, at that time itself, the static things is getting to be loaded. So because of that reason, before it is going to execute your main method, it will execute your blocks. So we can have a multiple blocks in your programming. So we can have any number of static blocks. So whenever you have multiple static blocks in your programming, in which order you are written, in that order only it is going to execute. Right, so I'll show you an example for this static block. So remember, the static block is used for initializing the static variables. So we can initialize static variables by simply or directly in your program itself, and we can modify the static variable content by using the static methods. And then we want to initialize values for your static variables in another way, that is by using static blocks. So I'll give you an example for static block. So I think it is main. So now you can see here. So this is my class, and here I have three static variables. One is A, which I directly assigned, and B and max is another two static variables. And you can find out this is one static method block and this is another static block. See, what do you mean by block? Is nothing but it's a combination of open and closed brace. Right? So open and closed braces. This is said to be a block. So before that you can use a keyword static. Then this block is said to be a static block. And you have a multiple static blocks here. So in this first static block, I am going to assign value with B for 4 times of A. So now you can see I am not assigning the value for B. What simply I am doing, I can take a value of A and I can improve 4 times of my A value, and I am going to assign that value to my B. Whereas in this block, I am going to assign value for my max variable, that is 30. So this is a static method, because we know we can access static variables by using static methods only. So we cannot access by using an ordinary methods. So for that here I'm using static method. So the name of the method is display, and by this I'm going to display all the values of A, B and max. And here you can see in public static void main. So I simply call my method display. So because we know static methods need not to instantiated with the objects that can directly referred by the class. So we are in the same class. So in previous example, I had two classes like employee 1 and employee demo 1 is two classes, right? So because of that reason, I'm instantiated with my class name. But here I have same class. In that class itself, I have a main method. So because of that reason, I don't need to give like main.display because I'm in the same class. So I can directly call the method which is of my static method directly here, that is display method. So as I said earlier, before the main method is going to execute, your static blocks are executed, right? Your static blocks are executed before your main method. So in what order you are given, in that order only it is going to execute. Suppose, see for example, I will alter this order. So I will cut this and I will paste after this. So now you can see. So as per the things, as per the norms it will say. So like this block is going to execute first, then this block, and after that this main method. Because of this main method is going to call this display method, it is going to display all your values, that is of your static variable values. I just save this program because I made the changes on it, and now I'm going to run this program. Now you can see Java C, and here my program name is main.java. So now I need to execute this by using interpreter. So my program name simply I can give, that is main. So now you can observe that here, what is my first block will say it is a second static block where I'm going to assign value to my max static variable 30. And then I have another block which is going to assign 4 times of a value to b, and that is executed second. And after that my main method is executed. Because of that reason, after I'm getting these two statements, I can find out the values of a, b and max. I hope you all can understand. So now move on to the next topic in static, that is static class. So when you are using static classes in Java programming language, so whenever we want to implement the nesting of classes, so then we are going to use the concept of static class. So we can create nesting of classes in two ways. So without having any static declaration, so that class is said to be inner classes. Like we can have one class, and in that class again we have to create another class. So for well-being organizing things, we are going to create nesting of classes. See, for example, if you go with a real-time example, suppose we have a class like student, and now that student class is having some data members like student name and student age, gender, phone number, and all these things. Whereas coming to address, again that address is having many fields like the street number, the street name, and the city name, state name, country name, and along with the door number and any landmarks. So again the same will consist in the multiple things. So that I can make in student class, I can take another class which is of a nesting class. So depends on your requirement, right? Whether we want to make that thing as common to all. So in order to make that, we can create the nesting classes by using this concept of static class concept. Otherwise, we can use two classes, both are not static. So such type of nesting classes are said to be inner classes. So in Java programming language, it allows us to create a class within a class. So it provides compelling a way of grouping the elements that we'll only use in one place. So I said, like, we want to use everything in one place, then you are going to use the concept of this nesting classes. So this helps to keep our code more organized and readable. So we can understand. And the nesting class architecture is divided into two ways. So one is nesting class that we declare a static are called as static nested classes, and nested class that are not static are called as a inner classes. The main difference between these two is like your inner class and the static nested classes is, so inner classes have an access to all the members of the enclosing class, so including private things also, whereas the static nested classes only have an access to a static members of the outer class. So I got a little bit like power disturbance, so because of that I'll make the changes again. Now see, so this is my package and this is my class name employee1. In this employee1 class I have another class like employee static. And you can find out, see, whenever we want to make a static nested classes, and remember always outer class it must not be static, right? So it cannot be static, and inner class only we can make it as a static. So remember that we don't make the outer class as a static method, static class. So it will be a public class So now my class name is example 1. Here I have one static variable which is of type private, because I'm going to access these things within a class only. I cannot access outside. So because of that, I want to make this variable is of type private. And then I'm assigning my string name is tech tutorials 2k21. So what simply I said, by using your static class or static nested class, you are going to access the static variables of your outer class. So this is your outer class. See, example 1 is outer. And by this method, I can access my static variable, right? Because this class is static, because of that reason, by using this normal method, I'm going to access my static variable, because I already said we cannot access static variable along with an ordinary variable. I mean ordinary method. By the method display is going to display the static variable. Why? Because my class is of type static. And then now you can see this is my main method. Here I'm created an object, and you can observe the objects how it is created. This is my outer class name and this is my inner class name. So you can take the reference of both. Then you can create an object. So this is outer class and this is inner class. Because inside of this, here I am having my method. I want to access this. So nesting. So you can use the reference of outer class and you can use the reference of inner class. Then you can create an object here. So here this is an object is created obj. By using this obj object, I am going to display the value of my static variable. So that is tech tutorials 2k21. So I just execute this program. So here I need to write Java C. And my program name is, so what is my outer thing? It is example 1. So I can give example 1 dot Java. So here I'm given the name is wrong, like example. Okay. Example dot Java. So now it is going to execute this program. And after that, I need to run this by using the interpreter. And I need to pass my class name here is employee1. Oh my god, what's happening here? So this is a way how we are going to create static classes in Java programming. So now move on to the final. So final is a keyword which is used in different context in Java programming. So what are the different contexts are? We can use final keyword as a variable along with your variable or along with your method and class. So when you use this final keyword before your variable, it will make your variable as constant. Means it cannot allow you to reinitialize the value variable with another value. So we know that final keyword purpose, like you don't want to change the value variable value throughout your program. So you don't want to make anything to change your variable. So simply what we have to do, we can make it as final. Make your method is also of type final. So when means whenever we want to override, we don't want to override a particular method. Means you have the override concept is nothing but we have a concept of inheritance, right? So in that inheritance, parent class is having some methods and we want to use that method. So what this overriding concept is, we have a method in parent or child class also and we need to override. Means the previous content is going to be override with the current things. Suppose you in your program you don't want to allow, right? You want to make your parent methods or a protected way, like you don't want to change it by the children. So what simply we can make that method, we can make it as a final. So it doesn't allow you to override. And now you can create your class name as final. So when you create a class name as final, now the inheritance concept is not going to be applied for that class. Means we cannot use that class and we cannot extend a new class from the don't allow any object to change that particular value of a variable. That is the purpose of final variable. And coming to final method, we don't want to make or we don't want to allow any of the child class to override the methods of your parent class. We want to make the parent class method safe, secure. We don't want to change it by the child class. So then your method is to be final. And whenever for the child class to get the properties of some parent class, now you make that parent class as a final. So now it doesn't allow you to inherit. It doesn't allow you to extend. Example like I said, like in Java programming, you keep the final keyword before your variable or method or class, it is going to be restricted some things. So I'll show you with an example how it is going to be restricted. Okay. So now we'll go with the programming. So I think example is final example. Yes, I think so. So we'll go with this. So now we have a final variable here. See, this is my class name. Final example is my class name. And then here it is my main method. In that main method, I have one variable of type final. So when I take this variable is of type final, so this value is constant. So in future, again, I am trying to reinitialize this variable with some other value. See here in the next line itself, I am trying to initialize this age with 45. Now I am trying to display that value of age. So obviously, it will give me an error because you are trying to change the constant value and you are trying to change the final variable. It is not possible. So it will show you an error. I will execute this so that you can understand. And here my program name is final example. So Java C and my program name is final. Okay, so make sure you have to give your class name properly, otherwise your compiler is not going to recognize, right? So remember that thing. So Java's final example. So final example dot Java, because I'm going to compile this file first. So now you can see if you have an errors, what's happening actually when you are executing the program? So it doesn't prompt you. Like you have to make changes of those things, then only that is going to be executed. Otherwise, it is not executed, right? So here what it is telling, see, error cannot assign a value to final variable age, because we already have a value for age, some value. That is means the final means when you are using a keyword before your final variable, it doesn't allow you to change the value of the things. So such things are said to be a constants, right? So I will save and execute this program. See, now I didn't get any errors. See here, I just execute the same program again. So now you can see age is 32, right? So now right, I hope you all can understand. So if I'm removing that statement and my program is executed, and then it will show me the age of that particular person. So move on to the next example, that is a final method. So what your final method will say? So the final method will restrict the overriding concept. So what do you mean by override? So simply so this is an example for override. So we have an examples for override. So now here you can see. So this is an example of here I'm going to override the method of my parent class. See here, this is my class name, and this class name I have one method called display, and in this display method I'm going to display like this is a final method. And here I have my child class, and which is going to extend it from my parent class final demo. And here I'm trying to override, because see, I have the same method. I have the same method in my parent class as well as my child class. And in my child class I'm trying to print this is a final method, and in my child class I'm trying to print this, the final method is overridden. So now I'm going to override the functionality of my parent class in my child class. It is not allowed by final keyword, right? So by final method it is not allowed. So in your main method, simply we are creating an object for a class child, because in inheritance we know we have to create an object for the child class, and from that child class object I'm going to call this display methods. So now you can see, so here we are getting an error. So here we can give Java C, and then the program name is child.java. So now you can observe that it will give you an error like display in child cannot override display in final demo. So because when we want to do override, so we have to give the same prototype what you are giving in your main in your parent class as well as the child class. Right? So this is about a final method. So here see, this is your final method, and this is also your final method. And now coming to our last topic is final class. So if you want to make some class name as final, now now it doesn't allow you to inherit. That is, we cannot extend. So I'll show you that example. So we'll go with the example. So here you can see the class name final class is of type final. So this is a final class. So in this final class, by using this class, I am going to extend my child class child1. So this child1 class is going to be extended or trying to extend it from your final class. So it doesn't allow you, because what you to inherit, right? So simply the remaining everything is same in this. So only this is here. So this is my final class and this is my child class. I'm trying to extending from my parent class. It restricted me. So that's what